Why did the Colorado Avalanche trade Mikko Rantanen? If you clicked on this video, you're looking for answers to the question I just posed. And honestly, I'm still looking for answers to this question as well, because I've spent the last 12 hours or so on Twitter reading thought pieces, reading tweets, responding to people, having conversations with my friends, and I just don't even know where to start. But I figured it was appropriate, as the resident Avs fan of Bar Down, to make a bit of a video on this and just get all of my thoughts out there for you guys to enjoy. We're going to be doing a podcast on this on Tuesday as well, but I wanted to give you immediate reaction because Tuesday is just too far away not to talk about this. So let's start with the why. I think the biggest question is why now as opposed to maybe before the trade deadline, which is still months away. What about the offseason? Why couldn't they just sign him? These are all very valid questions and concerns from fans that they've kind of expressed. The way I look at this as far as the timing goes is it says a few things. One, I think it says that the Avs don't view their team as the Stanley Cup favorite or even maybe one of the two best teams in the West at the moment. And the reason I say that is because I think if they were in first in the Central, maybe challenging for a President's Trophy, you probably don't see this trade happen. And they are content and perfectly happy with going through the rest of the season, not knowing if Mikko was going to sign a long-term extension with them in the summer. But if you lose him, you still give your team the best shot at winning the Stanley Cup, which I can totally appreciate given in this scenario, they'd be one of the favorites. I'm also happy I waited to kind of talk about my thoughts till right now because as Pierre LeBrun tweeted, this week the Avs and Mikko Rantanen's camp were talking about a contract extension, and those talks were still happening. It wasn't like he was unwilling to sign long-term with Colorado. He just wanted his number, which a lot of people are looking at as $14 million, and there are concerns with that number. Obviously, the biggest concern is he'd be making more than Nathan MacKinnon, who just won the Hart Trophy as one of the three best players in hockey. And then you've got Cale Makar, who's coming up as well soon for his contract extension. And you figure as the best defenseman in hockey, arguably, maybe a two-time Norris winner after this season, he's going to want an even bigger number than Mikko, and probably deservedly so, given he's probably a top 5 player in hockey. I can understand why the Avs were unwilling to go to $14 million, even though Rantanen is a top 15 player in hockey, undoubtedly. Like since 2020, 2021, he's 4th in the league in points. He is going to put up 100 points again for the 3rd season in a row. He's been an incredible playoff performer for this team and one of the best of this generation. But when Leon Draisaitl signed his contract, I think Rantanen looked at that number and was like, I could probably get that too. I'm probably deservedly at that level with Leon, considering the amount of points I've put up in this long period of time, my playoff success, being a key contributor on a cup-winning team, being an engine for this team at some points as well. I can understand that. And I think a lot of fans were just like, well, the salary cap's going up. Like, why don't you just pay him then? The reason you don't pay him that amount of money, to me anyway, is because I think you value the potential of getting Cale Makar's deal done and giving him whatever number that he wants, as opposed to maybe getting into a bidding war with him and then being in a scenario where you can't find a way to pay Cale because you've already paid Mikko and Nate's making what he is, and you've got other contracts on the books, whether it's Nichushkin or Landeskog, a little more long-term, that ties up a lot of money. The general reaction, I still think, though, is just like, if you've got star players, you need to find a way to pay them. And that's kind of been my consensus on this as well, as far as just how I approach star players. And if you have them, like, they are always going to be better on your team, paying them money. He's only 28 years old in Mikko's example. So I can understand that side of thinking for sure, because as we saw with the return, you're never going to win a trade for a star player. It's just not going to happen. Whatever Natchez turns out to be, he's, yes, a couple of years younger than Mikko Rantanen, but he is not going to reach Mikko's heights. He might get close. It's not like he's having a bad season, and I think people have kind of pointed out the 5-on-5 numbers have been better for Natchez compared to Rantanen and what he's produced at 5-on-5. But let's be honest, he's never going to live up to what Mikko Rantanen is. Now, Can he live up to maybe 3/4 of it worth less money so you can add more pieces and not feel financially backed into a corner when it comes time to maybe give Cale his extension? Yeah, that's totally a plausible scenario in my head here. But with all that said, you're not going to win a trade giving away a star player like Mikko Rantanen, a top 15 player in the NHL. It's just not going to happen. It's why I've always argued against Leaf fans saying we can just trade Marner. It's like you're never going to win a Marner trade. And maybe in the long run, you do kind of win the Marner trade, but I think the Avalanche today are a lot worse than they were yesterday with Mikko Rantanen on their team before he was traded. I think that's an undoubted fact. And I think going forward, it's not, even if Necas is a really, really good player and kind of fits in perfectly, those variables are still unknown. Rantanen is a proven player. I think the interesting parts about this are seeing what Nathan MacKinnon and what Mikko Rantanen kind of look like separately and how that affects both of their play, because Mikko and Nate together, they've played predominantly together for these large stretches of the best stretches of their careers. And so now with Rantanen going to play with Aho and MacKinnon being the entire focal point now of this offense, granted, he was that before because of his ability to skate with the puck, create offense in that way. He wasn't the goal scorer, which Rantanen was on the receiving end of a lot of that. But Nathan MacKinnon was the play driver on that line, and Rantanen was still exceptional in his own right. I think it's just another wrinkle to this, though, to see what Mikko looks like with a guy he's pretty familiar with in Aho, being another Finnish player that he's played with, and then the chemistry that now needs to grow between MacKinnon and if Necas plays with him or whatever the Avs decide to do in their top six. That's another wrinkle to this that I think Colorado wouldn't have been willing to experiment with if they thought they were one of the three best teams in hockey right now. The only other thing from the Colorado side of this is they're probably not done yet, right? Like, this move opens up some cap space, which I think is important not only now, but in the future. You don't know whether Gabriel Landeskog is coming back, but I think you're probably leaning on the side of he's probably closer to returning than maybe we thought before this trade happened, because I don't think you make this trade, given the timing of it, given the wild card race and the central race that you're in, unless you probably had some idea of when Landeskog could return. So I think maybe that's a positive news in that direction. But at the same time, if he's not, then you've got his LTIR money to go out and make another move. I just think that they are not done yet. They can't be. I trust in the direction of the team, even if the immediate future of the franchise is worse because Mikko Rantanen is not on the team anymore. I think that cannot be overstated. From the Carolina side of things, this is a home run. This is an absolute home run, and the only way it's not is if Rantanen doesn't sign an extension, which I love that this is what the Hurricanes just haven't been able to do in a long time, or just this hasn't been their identity. Paying star players is just not in their playbook, given the swings they've taken. And yes, they've been aggressive in trades. You think back to Jake Gensel and acquiring him last year. They've been aggressive on the trade market, but I think when it comes to signing players, I think a move like this signals a big change, because not only is it a massive swing given the unknown of Rantanen and his contract extension, but if he does sign at that number, that is so unlike anything the Hurricanes have ever done before. I love this for them. I've always been I think people view me as a Hurricanes hater, which I'm actually not. It's more just like I've always felt they need that star player, that game breaker, and Mikko Rantanen is that. He is a physical force that is so skilled, one of the best goal scorers in hockey, one of the most consistent performers we have in our sport. And instantly the best player on the Carolina Hurricanes is Mikko Rantanen. No question about it. So in a league where it's really tough to swing trades for star players, they hit a home run. They got one of the 15 best players in the NHL, one of the 10 best forwards in the NHL. That's the kind of impact we're talking about, and that immediately propels them into a tier where I feel like they haven't been in this iteration of their team with Rod the Bod. Like, they have not swung as hard as they have in this trade. And so I'm really excited about what that team can be with Mikko Rantanen. It's a great move. It's a home run. And I think even if he doesn't sign an extension, I mean, if he doesn't, you're going to be super, super disappointed. But like, you make these moves because you think they're going to help you win a Stanley Cup, not just in the future, but in the interim. And that's what we're looking at here, is the Hurricanes being one of the elite teams in hockey already, and now you added one of the best forwards in the game. A++. I don't think I've missed anything. I think those are all the thoughts that I have on this after kind of sleeping on it. It really truly was just like shock, not understanding why they were doing this, reading up on it, trying to formulate my own kind of thoughts and opinions on it. But at the end of the day, as an Avalanche fan, if you knew he was going to walk away at the end of this season and you were going to get nothing from him because you weren't willing to meet his number, this is about as best as you could do. Getting a player that's 26 in Natchez, who's on pace for just under 100 points for the first time in his career, which I think is incredible. He's a fast player, which gives the Avs just arguably an even faster team than they already had for sure with him and McKinnon. If they're playing on a line together, that's scary for any opposing defenders. So I like it. I like that it allows them some flexibility years down the road. I think that it gives them the best chance at also giving Cale whatever he wants, which I think is extremely valuable. And I think anyone would say they value, if you could choose one or the other, Makar over Rantanen, which is a tough choice, but it is the correct answer. As much as this is painful, because he was obviously one of my favorite players and it just comes as a shock, I think in the future, Colorado fans can hope that this was the right move, and there are reasons outlined that this was the right move, even if it's not going to feel good, not only in the moment, not only for the rest of this season, but maybe even next season as well. It's a tough pill to swallow, to say the least. We're going to have more thoughts on this on the Tuesday podcast. We're filming it Monday, but we will have way more thoughts with Jesse and Pac on that one, because I know they're going to be itching to talk about it as well. And I think we'll maybe do a bit of a trade episode, just given the magnitude of this deal, one of the biggest deals in NHL history that shocked the hockey world. So more thoughts to come, but this is just an initial kind of thought video. I appreciate your time. And subscribe and like if you haven't already.